Hey, Reddit. I'm Andrew, a 52M self-made man. I grew up in a small town, started working odd jobs as a teenager, and eventually built my own business from the ground up. Now, I'm comfortable, financially secure, and happily married to my wife, Fiona, who's 50. We've been together for 25 years, and it's been a good run. We've got 2 kids, Hannah, who's 24, and Stephen, who's 22. Hannah isn't biologically mine, but I've been her dad since she was 2 years old. Fiona was a single mom when we met. Her ex, Shane, was out of the picture, and honestly, I didn't care. I fell in love with both her and Hannah, and when Fiona and I got married, I adopted Hannah without a second thought. Fiona and I have done our best to give Hannah and Stephen a good life. We've worked hard, provided for them, and tried to instill good values. We're not a perfect family, who is? But we've always been close, or so I thought. Now, though, I'm questioning everything. This wedding situation has turned our lives upside down, and I need some advice. So here's the story. Shane is Hannah's biological father, and to be blunt, he's a piece of work. He and Fiona were young when they got together. She got pregnant, and instead of stepping up, Shane bailed. He had a drug problem back then, and from what I understand, he was into some shady stuff, small-time crimes, running with the wrong crowd, that sort of thing. Fiona was left to fend for herself. I came into the picture when Hannah was 2. Fiona was trying to make ends meet, working 2 jobs, and doing her best to be a good mom. Shane was nowhere to be found, and honestly, that was a good thing. He didn't show any interest in being a father, and Fiona didn't want him around. I stepped in, fell in love with both of them, and we became a family. I adopted Hannah legally, and Shane was out of the picture, until about 10 years ago. Out of the blue, Shane reappeared. He claimed to have cleaned up his act and wanted to be part of Hannah's life. I wasn't thrilled, but Hannah was curious about him, so Fiona and I agreed to let them reconnect. Since then, Shane has managed to worm his way back into her life. He's still financially unstable, always borrowing money from us or Hannah. Despite his shortcomings, he's formed a close bond with her, which, to be honest, has been tough for me to watch. He undermines me at every turn, making snide comments and trying to play the cool dad card whenever he can. I've tried to rise above it, but it's been hard, especially now. A few months ago, Hannah got engaged to her boyfriend, Paul. He's 26, a good guy, and comes from a decent family. Paul's hardworking and wants to make it on his own without relying on his family's money. When they announced their engagement, Fiona and I were thrilled. We offered to pay for the entire wedding as a gift to them, about $100,000 all in, including the venue, the dress, catering, everything. Hannah was over the moon and accepted our offer without hesitation. At first, the wedding planning was going smoothly. Fiona and I were heavily involved, helping with choosing venues, caterers, decorations, and more. We even put down some significant non-refundable deposits. But as the planning went on, things started to change. Hannah became more demanding and difficult to please. There were signs of bridezilla behavior that I tried to brush off as normal wedding stress, but in hindsight, I should have seen what was coming. A couple of weeks ago, Hannah came over for dinner. She seemed nervous, which was unusual for her. I had a feeling something was up, but I didn't press her on it. Fiona and I had made her favorite meal as a surprise, hoping to have a nice family evening. The dinner was tense from the start. Hannah was quiet, picking at her food, and I could tell something was weighing on her. After dessert, she finally spoke up, saying she had something important to discuss. My stomach sank a little. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. Hannah told us that she had decided she wanted Shane, her biological father, to walk her down the aisle. She said she wanted him to have the father-daughter dance at the reception too. She claimed it was because Shane was her real father, and she wanted to honor him on her big day. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say at first. I've been the one who's raised her, been there for every milestone, every scraped knee, every heartbreak. I'm the one who's provided for her, given her everything I could. And now, she was telling me that I was supposed to take a back seat at her wedding? I couldn't believe it. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but I was hurt, angry, and felt completely betrayed. I reminded Hannah that I've been there for her every step of the way. I've been the one she's called dad for the last 22 years. I asked her if any of that mattered to her, if she really thought Shane deserved to take those moments away from me. Hannah was adamant. She said she wasn't trying to hurt me, but this was something she needed to do for herself and for Shane. She accused me of trying to make the wedding about me instead of supporting her decision. Fiona, trying to keep the peace, stepped in. She reminded Hannah of everything I've done for her, how I've been the one to step up and be her father in every way that matters. Fiona even brought up some of the sacrifices I've made over the years, things Hannah never knew about, like the times I worked late nights or took on extra work to make sure she had everything she needed. But Hannah wasn't budging. She kept saying that this was her wedding, her choice, and that we needed to respect that. Fiona looked as devastated as I felt, but she didn't want to push Hannah too hard, fearing it would make things worse. The conversation turned into a heated exchange. I couldn't hold back anymore. I told Hannah that I felt like she was throwing away everything we had for some idealized version of Shane. I said it felt like she was trying to rewrite history, erasing me from the picture. Hannah fired back, saying that I was the one who was trying to control everything with my money. She accused me of trying to buy her love and loyalty, which hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All I've ever done is try to give her the best life possible, and now she was accusing me of manipulating her with money? Hannah laid down an ultimatum. Either I stepped back from the wedding and let Shane have his role, or she would elope with Paul and cut us out completely. She said it was her wedding, her day, and she was going to do it her way, no matter what. At that point, I was too angry and hurt to think straight. I didn't know how to respond. Fiona was in tears, begging Hannah to reconsider, but Hannah wouldn't listen. She just kept saying that this was the way it had to be. After thinking things over, I made a decision. I told Hannah that I would respect her wishes and step back from the wedding, but there was one condition. If I'm not fully involved in the wedding, neither is my money. I told her that I wouldn't be funding a wedding where I was treated like a second-class guest. I gave her a few days to think it over and reconsider her decision. I made it clear that I wasn't trying to punish her, but that I couldn't in good conscience pay for something that was going to hurt me so deeply. Hannah was shocked and didn't believe I would actually follow through with it. She thought I was bluffing or trying to manipulate her into changing her mind. But I stood firm. Fiona backed me up, though I could see how much it pained her to do so. The tension in our family was unbearable. Hannah barely spoke to us, and when she did, it was cold and distant. She was obviously upset, but she wouldn't back down. She kept insisting that this was her wedding and that she had every right to make it how she wanted. Shane, predictably, tried to play peacemaker publicly. He acted all concerned and supportive, saying he didn't want to cause any trouble and that he understood where I was coming from. But behind the scenes, I could tell he was pleased as punch that he was finally getting what he wanted, a chance to play the role of the doting father. He started spending more time with Hannah, feeding her lines about how she deserved to have her dream wedding and how I was just being controlling. He was trying to turn her against me, and from what I could see, it was working. With my financial support gone, Hannah and Paul started to feel the strain. They tried to keep the original wedding plans, but it quickly became clear that they couldn't afford it. Vendors started pulling out because payments weren't being made, and the whole thing started falling apart. Hannah tried to pretend everything was fine, but I could see the stress getting to her. She and Paul were arguing more, and the whole wedding planning process was turning into a nightmare. Hannah approached Paul's parents for help, but they politely refused. They said they didn't want to get involved in what they saw as a family matter. Hannah even considered taking out loans, but Paul was against it. He didn't want to start their marriage in debt, especially not for a wedding that was already causing so much trouble. I could see how much Hannah was struggling, and it tore me up inside. Part of me wanted to step in and fix everything, but I knew I couldn't. I had to stand by my decision, as much as it hurt. The weeks leading up to the wedding were tense, to say the least. The family was divided. Stephen, my son, sided with me, which caused even more friction between him and Hannah. They used to be close, but now they were barely speaking. Fiona tried to keep the peace, but even she was starting to lose hope. The whole situation was a mess, and I didn't see any way out of it that wouldn't leave someone hurt. Then, things took an even darker turn. Stephen, who had been suspicious of Shane from the beginning, hired a private investigator to dig into his background. What he found confirmed our worst fears. Shane was still involved in shady activities and had relapsed into drug use. Worse, the PI discovered that Shane had been stealing from the wedding fund, taking money from Hannah that she had given him for the wedding preparations and using it for who knows what. Stephen confronted Shane, who, of course, denied everything and tried to blame me for sabotaging the wedding. Hannah, initially, believed Shane and accused Stephen of trying to ruin her relationship with her father. But the whole thing blew up. Stephen presented the evidence he had gathered. He showed Hannah the PI's report, with photos, and everything. Hannah couldn't deny the truth anymore. She was devastated. The man she had been trying so hard to reconnect with, the man she had chosen over me, had betrayed her in the worst way possible. She realized that she had been manipulated and used by Shane, and that she had pushed away the people who had always been there for her, Fiona, Stephen, and me. Hannah tried to apologize to me, but I could see how much it hurt her pride to admit she was wrong. She was ashamed and embarrassed, and I could tell she didn't know how to fix the mess she had made. She considered canceling the wedding altogether. She and Paul were at their breaking point, and the dream wedding she had envisioned was in tatters. Hannah was lost, not knowing what to do or how to make things right. I wanted to help Hannah, to step in and make everything okay like I had always done. But I was deeply hurt, and I didn't know if I could just sweep everything under the rug. Part of me wanted to secretly pay for the wedding, to give her the day she had dreamed of, even if I wasn't fully involved. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. In the end, I decided to stand firm in my decision. I had to let Hannah deal with the consequences of her choices. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew it was the right thing to do. The wedding day came, but it was nothing like what had been planned. Instead of the dream venue, the ceremony was held in a local community center. It was small and simple, a far cry from the elaborate affair Hannah had wanted. I wasn't involved in the key moments. Shane wasn't there. Hannah had cut him out of her life after everything that had happened, but I wasn't the one walking her down the aisle either. That honor went to Paul's father, who had stepped in at the last minute. I sat in the audience, watching my daughter marry the man she loved, but feeling like a stranger in her life. Hannah was visibly distressed throughout the ceremony. The reception was a small, subdued affair. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Shane showed up, drunk and belligerent. He caused a scene, trying to get to Hannah, but was quickly escorted out by security. It was a final, ugly reminder of the damage he had caused. In a last attempt to show Hannah that I still cared, I had secretly arranged for her favorite band to play at the reception. When they started playing, Hannah broke down in tears during what should have been the father-daughter dance. It was supposed to be our moment, but it had been ruined by everything that had happened. After the wedding, things didn't get much better. The family relationships were still strained, and Hannah and Paul's marriage started on shaky ground. The dream wedding had turned into a nightmare, and it seemed like no one was happy. Shane disappeared again, leaving Hannah devastated. She had finally seen him for who he really was, but the damage was done. Our family was fractured, and I didn't know if we would ever be able to put the pieces back together. So, Reddit, that's my story. I'm sitting here wondering if I did the right thing. Should I have paid for the wedding even though I wasn't going to be fully involved? Or did I do the right thing by standing my ground and letting Hannah face the consequences of her choices? I feel like I've lost my daughter, and I don't know if I'll ever get her back. I'm just looking for some advice, some perspective from people who aren't as close to the situation. Did I ruin her wedding, or did I just refuse to let myself be disrespected? Final update. Hey Reddit, it's Andrew again. It's been about 3 months since Hannah's wedding, and a lot has happened since I last posted. I've been hesitant to share an update because, frankly, I've been processing everything that's gone down. But I'm still struggling with how I handled things and whether I'm making the right decisions now. After the wedding, things between Hannah and me were pretty much non-existent. We didn't talk, and honestly, I wasn't sure if we ever would again. Fiona and I were walking on eggshells around each other, trying to keep things normal for Stephen, but the whole situation was pretty messed up. Stephen was still angry, at Hannah, at Shane, at the whole mess. And I was caught in this limbo of missing my daughter but also feeling too hurt to reach out. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it, and a few nights ago, something happened that I never saw coming. It was late, maybe around midnight, when my phone rang. I wasn't asleep, hadn't been sleeping well for a while, honestly, so I picked up immediately. It was Hannah. I could barely recognize her voice, she was crying so hard. She asked if she could come over, saying she needed to talk to me. So I told her to come over. Hannah arrived about half an hour later. When she walked through the door, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked exhausted, her eyes were red and puffy, her hair was a mess. She didn't say much at first. We sat down in the living room, and there was this heavy silence between us. I could feel her struggling to find the right words, and I didn't want to push her. So, I waited. After what felt like a while, Hannah finally spoke. She apologized, really apologized, for everything. She admitted that she had been wrong, that she had let Shane get into her head and manipulate her into believing that he deserved a place in her life that he hadn't earned. She said she had been so caught up in this idea of a real father that she had lost sight of what really mattered. She told me that she was sorry for the way she treated me, for pushing me away, and for accusing me of trying to control her with money. She said she knew now that I was only trying to protect her and give her the best life possible. And then she broke down, crying and asking me if I could ever forgive her. Hearing those words from Hannah hit me hard. I had been waiting to hear them, but now that she was in front of me, apologizing, I told Hannah that I needed time to process everything, that I wasn't sure if I could just forgive and forget. I said that while I understood she was in a difficult place, the things she said and did still hurt deeply. She nodded, saying she didn't expect me to forgive her right away, but that she would do whatever it took to make things right. Then, Hannah started talking about her marriage to Paul. Things weren't going well. The wedding had been a disaster, and the aftermath had been even worse. They were struggling financially because of the scaled-down wedding and the debts they had taken on to make it happen without my help. Paul was resentful, not just of Hannah, but of the whole situation, of me, of Shane, of the drama that had overshadowed what was supposed to be the happiest time of their lives. Hannah confessed that she felt trapped. She didn't know how to fix her marriage or where to turn for help. The stress was eating her alive, and she was terrified that her marriage was falling apart before it even had a chance to begin. To make matters worse, Shane hadn't completely disappeared. He was still around, making promises to Hannah that he would help her financially, that he would be there for her. But deep down, Hannah knew that these were likely empty promises. Shane had a history of making grand gestures that never materialized, and Hannah was starting to see through them. but she was confused and vulnerable, and part of her still wanted to believe that Shane could change. She admitted that she didn't know who to trust anymore and that she was scared of making the wrong decisions. She asked me for advice, for help, and for guidance, the very things she had rejected from me before. In the meantime, the rest of the family hadn't been idle. Extended family members had been gossiping about the whole situation, everyone had an opinion, and none of it was helpful. Fiona's sister had called me out of the blue, offering advice on how to handle Hannah. I tried to tune out the noise, but it wasn't easy. Everyone seemed to think they knew what was best, but none of them were living this nightmare. Hannah asked me for help in a way I never thought I'd hear. She wanted me to help her fix the mess she was in. She said she knew she had to make things right, not just with me, but with Paul, too. She wanted to fix her marriage, to find a way to move forward, but she didn't know how to do it on her own. She promised that if I helped her, she would do everything she could to rebuild our relationship. She said she was willing to go to therapy, to have the hard conversations, to face whatever consequences came from her actions. All she wanted was a chance to make things right. I didn't give Hannah an answer right away. I told her I needed to think about it, to talk it over with Fiona and Stephen. She understood and left. That night, I sat down with Fiona and Stephen and told them everything. Fiona was relieved that Hannah had reached out. She didn't want me to get hurt again, and she was worried that if we helped Hannah too much, it might enable her to fall back into old patterns. Stephen, on the other hand, was more protective. He was still angry with Hannah and wasn't sure if she deserved another chance after everything she had put us through. We talked for hours, going back and forth. In the end, it came down to one simple question: was I willing to risk getting hurt again to help my daughter? Before making any decisions, I decided to take a more proactive approach with Shane. I couldn't stand the thought of him continuing to mess with Hannah's life, especially now that she was starting to see him for who he really was. So, I talked to a lawyer about the money Shane had stolen from Hannah's wedding fund. We had evidence, thanks to the PI Stephen hired, and we decided to pursue legal action against him. It wasn't about the money, it was about sending a message to Shane that he couldn't keep manipulating and hurting Hannah. It was also a way to protect her from falling into his trap again. The lawyer said we had a strong case, and while it wouldn't be easy, it was worth pursuing. I made sure to let Hannah know what I was doing and why. She was shocked at first, but she understood and even thanked me for it. After a lot of thinking, I finally made my decision. I told Hannah that I was willing to help her, but there were conditions. First, she had to go to therapy, not just individual therapy, but couples therapy with Paul, too. They needed to work on their marriage and figure out if they could truly make it work. Second, I told her that if she wanted my help, she had to cut ties with Shane completely. No more believing in his empty promises or letting him worm his way back into her life. I said that if she couldn't do that, I wouldn't be able to help her because it would only lead to more heartache for everyone involved. Finally, I told her that this was her last chance. I was willing to forgive her and move forward, but if she betrayed my trust again, I didn't know if I could ever recover from it. She needed to understand that while I loved her, I couldn't keep putting myself in a position to be hurt. Hannah agreed to all of my conditions without hesitation. She said she was ready to make the necessary changes and that she wanted to prove to me, and to herself, that she could be the daughter I deserved. The next step was to bring the whole family together. We had a meeting with Hannah, Paul, Fiona, Stephen, and me. It was the first time we'd all been in the same room since the wedding. We started by discussing what had happened, with everyone sharing their perspective. It was hard, there were a lot of tears, a lot of apologies, and a lot of emotions. Paul admitted that he had been struggling with resentment, not just towards Hannah but towards our whole family. He felt like he had been dragged into a situation that he couldn't control, and it had made him question his marriage. Stephen, surprisingly, was the one who broke the ice. He told Hannah that while he was still angry, he missed his sister and wanted to find a way to move forward. That seemed to open the door for the rest of us to start talking more openly. By the end of the meeting, we had a plan in place. Hannah and Paul would start therapy immediately, and we would all work on rebuilding our relationships. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like there was hope. A few weeks later, we had our first family dinner since the wedding. It was awkward at first, but as the evening went on, it felt like we were starting to find our rhythm again. Hannah was still dealing with the fallout from her marriage, and Paul was struggling to let go of his resentment, but there were signs that they were starting to work through it. Therapy was helping, and while they still had a long way to go, they were committed to trying. There are still some issues, though. Paul's resentment hasn't completely disappeared, and I can tell he's still angry with me. I get it, I wasn't exactly in his corner during the wedding fiasco, and I know that's left a mark. Stephen, on the other hand, is more protective than ever. He's keeping a close eye on Hannah, making sure she's not slipping back into old habits. I appreciate it, but I worry that he might be holding on to his anger too tightly. So that's where we are now, Reddit. I've decided to help Hannah, but with conditions that I hope will protect both her and the rest of the family. This will probably be my final update, as I'm ready to focus on my family. Thank you for reading and for all the support and advice you've given to me so far. It's meant more to me than you know.